Thursday and welcome to Mind the Gap. I'm C and today I'm here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to put you on to a podcast that just ended. I've been dying to tell you about this podcast, but I wanted to wait until it was over so that you could go binge it, unlike me who had to wait around forever to finish it. But this is so much more than a normal podcast. I've been obsessed with it. I wait for every Tuesday when a new episode comes out. It's part of a new series called The Opportunist, and the first season is about a woman called Sherry Shriner, and it is the most interesting show about the most interesting woman. I've never Googled the picture of Sherry Shriner because I want to imagine her in my own way. I still haven't seen what she looks like. I don't want to know. I have this perfect picture of her in my head that matches her voice. Sherry Shriner ran this cult where she basically believed she was the daughter of the Most High, like she was a daughter of God, and that she had a direct connection to God, and she could decide if people were their true selves or if they had been cloned and were now the tool of the devil and were lizards inside and were being used in spiritual warfare to be kind of like a part of the deep state, to take over the world, and had connections to aliens. She took basic spiritual warfare terminology and ratcheted them up to aliens and cloning and lizard people. My favorite part is that she invented this thing called Orgone, and it was basically something that you could get a recipe for that you would make in muffin tins, like copper wire and fiberglass, and you would bake the substances in your oven, what she called Orgone muffins. So if you would surround your house with these baked substances made out of, all this copper and fiberglass, you were protecting your home from the lizard people and spiritual warfare and all the clones that were trying to come get you. There's two major components to the podcast that I won't reveal that make it so mind-blowingly serious and legal mystery, and I won't ruin any of that for you because that part is, I think that you should hear that part for yourself. The baking of the Orgone, putting the Orgone barriers and walls around your house to protect yourself was one of my favorite parts because that's just next level. Like, props to Sherry Shriner for even coming up with that. She and her Orgone warriors and her cult would travel around to places like Fort Knox and think that they were protecting alien attacks on Fort Knox, so they would put Orgone around these major landmarks. At one point, they thought that they protected sporting events from major bombings, like when the Super Bowl had the blackout, they had put Orgone all around the Super Bowl venue, and the blackout was a sign that the aliens had failed and only managed to black out the venue before the event started, instead of the entire Super Bowl being attacked by aliens. It's just really a case of somebody who's into spiritual warfare taking it to the next level, adding in clones and aliens, and then the good old cult trope of when you decide you don't like someone in your cult anymore and you don't want them to be part of it, you turn on them and say that they've become a naysayer, which in her case, that person had been cloned and was no longer the actual human that they used to be, and that they were dead behind the eyes. And if you put this Orgone in front of them, then they would disintegrate or turn into a lizard in front of you. This Sherry Shriner lady was really interesting because she conducted all of her business online. She did everything kind of through her Facebook community, and her husband didn't take part in her activities. He didn't seem to be really super pumped about her being this cult leader from her, I think she had a shed in the backyard, or I might have made that up. If I made it up, I really like it. Let's just say she had a shed in her backyard that she broadcasted from. So she had her Facebook group and she would do a radio broadcast, and that's how she gained all of her followers. And they would have chat groups online, so nobody really came and hung out with Sherry. They didn't get to know her. She did have a few close people to her that would travel to locations like Fort Knox to put the Orgone substances, around the venues to protect them from the lizard/alien attacks. But she didn't have, formal services where people were mingling and mixing with her. Very few people met her. Social media has kind of changed that religious grifting game. And I'm sure she's an example of hundreds of thousands of people who are probably doing the same thing. This show has a ton of clips of her radio show. The host, who's wonderful, by the way, Hannah Smith, she says, by the last episode that she doesn't even think twice when she hears Sherry talking about, lizards and clones and aliens. It just kind of reminds me of how those of us who grew up in Christian nationalist evangelical homes, nothing sounds strange to us, but to somebody who grew up outside of that, it sounds, just bizarre and out of this world. So it just kind of reminded me of how, we feel when we hear, about spiritual warfare and powers and principalities of the air. Sherry Shriner took this to the next level. And then there's these two extremely major events where a couple of her followers make the ultimate choice in life because of Sherry. I don't know that a lot of people who follow me will be surprised by what happened. All that remains to be seen is really detailed circumstances about what went down with each of these two people. For people like us, you're like, yeah, when you're raised with that mentality of laying down your life for your faith and for what you believe in, showing how deep your faith is by making the ultimate sacrifices, or giving up on your life when the people who are your religious leaders have given up on you. I just don't think a lot of you listening will be surprised at that part, but it's just really interesting how it plays out and what ends up happening to Sherry and what ends up happening to her supporters and those people involved in those big decisions that are made. It just sort of stands out as a different podcast than a lot of those, true crime cult shows that are out there right now. I just think it's something that will really intrigue people who watch my videos and follow me on Twitter, and something that we could really get into a good discussion about. I wanted to put you onto that podcast. It's called The Opportunist. It's on all the podcast apps. I really, really want y'all to listen to it. So listen to it and come back in a few days or weeks and let me know what you think about it. And then we can discuss the really crazy parts. So get on it. The Opportunist, hosted by Hannah Smith. Can't wait to hear what everyone thinks about it. Have a great rest of the week. Mind the gap.